Hello everyone, this is Ankur Joshi. I'm the founder and CEO of Nuclei. We are a B2B fintech company based in India. We work with banks and develop multiple products and integrate these products into the bank's ecosystem and serve banks customers, whether they are retail customers or business customers. We work with 20 plus banks across South Asia and Middle East. And today in this podcast, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Dennis Khoo, uh, who is an author and has an extensive experience in financial services. Dennis, welcome to the podcast. Really excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm thrilled. I think we're going to have a fabulous discussion coming up.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you. So, Dennis, right before we started recording, I was talking about that a lot of leaders in the market that we have spoken about or spoken with uh, generally have a lot of principles or values which get set in very early days, right? So, before we go into depth of your career, I want to go back and understand how was your formative years. Where did you grow up? Your family background, your education background, your community background, and maybe speak about some of the events which helped form your personality and gave you those principles or values which have remained true throughout your life.
Okay, that's an interesting starting point. I grew up, I guess, in the growth phase of Singapore. I was born here in 1963, so 1963 Singapore is a completely different place, and I guess I'm very fortunate in that generation that has really seen Singapore transform, over those years. Family was lower income family. We lived in a government HDB flat here. I don't think I was very well to do. I didn't take a plane till I was 25. Compared to my children, right? They have been on planes since I don't know, when they were babies. So small family was me and my sister. Tracing back to values, I can't really honestly place what were the things that really from my childhood that formed my value system. But I do have a pretty strong value system. I do believe that there's a right way to do things, there's a wrong way to do things. I can be very stubborn about what I think is the wrong way and the things we should not do, because they damage trust, they damage integrity, and some of them are just outright unprofessional and things that I think are totally outright unfair to individuals, to groups of people. So I have always, I guess, been very, very obstinate about doing things the right way.
Okay, that's good to know. But Dennis, you mentioned that you grew up in a lower middle class family in a government housing. Um, During the growth years, what led you to take up engineering as a subject?
Well, back then, Singapore needed a lot of engineers.
Okay.
So when I was ready to go into university, and this was back in 1988, engineering was the thing to do. Frankly, as a child, I was more interested in physics. But frankly, physics was all about maths. And you have to be very good at maths to do physics. And my maths I don't think my maths was that good, and I wasn't that interested in mathematics. So I think engineering was the next kind of closest thing. I don't think I got much advice in terms of what kind of careers, the way we give our children advice today. I don't think was the kind of advice I got. So it was kind of everybody's kind of. I was doing in pre-university. I think it was double maths and it was physics and chemistry. And so I guess it was quite a normal route, from there to go into, if I couldn't do physics, then it was engineering.
Okay, okay, okay. Fair enough, fair enough. So, uh, if you look back, right, like you've done your engineering and then you did a lot of a couple of degrees in business management as well, right?
Yeah, correct.
If you look at your career as well, uh, it's very rare to find bankers who sit at an intersection of technology as well
Yeah.
as business, right?
Yes.
Like there are career bankers who have focused only on technology, or there are career bankers who have focused only on the business side, right? Very rarely, and this is something which we see across almost every bank, that both the technology vertical as well as the business vertical aren't able to empathize with each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what led you to sit at that intersection? And because that
Yeah.
would have given you a very different perspective, a window into both sides of things, right?
Yeah. Frankly, the answer is actually much simpler than you probably are expecting. I before I had interned at Hewlett Packard. Um, I think it was my second or third year, and they hired me as a hardware engineer. Um, I got a job offer before I graduated. HP was then the Google of Silicon Valley, and HP is the original creator of Silicon Valley. And it was a great company, and it gave me the opportunity to travel. Uh, and Back then, the 25 megabyte hard disk is the size of a washing machine. I started out in hardware, then went to operating systems, went to set up a networking business. Um, and I don't think I ever thought, I'll be doing something outside of technology. But after 13 years in HP, and HP was kind of in a little bit of a disarray then, I left for a short stint in a software company that basically sold content management software. And this was just when the internet bubble was bursting. So I was only there for 9 months. And I happened to get a call then from Standard Chartered Bank. And the reason was I always thought bankers made more money than engineers. And then being young, not coming from a very wealthy family, thought, yeah, it could be a better outcome for me and the family. And it is true, although I do find that it is a bit perplexing because bankers don't really make anything. We just intermediaries, whereas engineers do make stuff. But in general, as your career progresses, bankers are paid better. So it's not the glamorous story you probably were thinking of. It was just opportunity came, and then I took it, and it wasn't planned. And most of my career has been planned.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Uh, let's talk about tomorrow, and maybe before you started tomorrow, let's go back a few years and understand that did this you having perspective from both business and technology side have any role to play in you leading tomorrow, right? And also maybe speak about if tomorrow was something which was a long time coming, not just at UOB but also in the region.
I think first, what you mentioned earlier, right? This confluence of two different domains, information technology and banking, I think it's quite significant. And this part does have an interesting story to it because it goes beyond the surface, right? I wrote C++ code when I first joined HP. And C++, I was surprised as I was researching for my first book, is still the sixth most used software programming language in the world. And that's after more than 30 years. So I have, in a sense, very deep, and my degree was in computer engineering. I have very deep understanding of computers. Plus, I had done every single retail role in the retail bank, every single product role. I had joined as in Stanchart as head of marketing, and then from head of marketing, I did the analytics. So I was also familiar with data and analytics, and then went to lead wealth management, which was basically insurance, investments, and deposits. From there, and Stanchart was great, as a company then, because they would rotate you to make sure you were very rounded. Something that I think is very hard to find, and something very important for anyone today that's leading a major, and I don't like to call it digital transformation, although have to because the term has stuck. But basically, if you're leading a business transformation involving technology, and everything involves technology today, right? You have to be very broad. And that's certainly an element that is missing and makes it even more difficult for people to manage such transformations today. And then from there, after wealth management, I ran all the lending, credit cards, personal loans, mortgages. Deposits came back, it became retail banking. I ran retail banking Singapore and Malaysia before becoming a consumer head, which had direct control of retail and then also oversight of SME banking and private banking. So it's a large, complex business. So and in the ensuing years, I had gotten my MBA and also PhD in international business, and therefore I am much broader than most people and understand how technology and business intimately come together. And even then, I think it turned out to be a very big challenge, and therefore I can imagine why most transformations don't meet their objectives, because it is very complicated in incumbent companies. We had 12 streams of work, brought out almost 500 new features. There's really no such thing as minimum viable product in a bank. You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. It either works or it doesn't. You can't just, I'm going to have bill payment, no funds transfer. Nobody's going to use it. You know what I mean? Because it's experiential, right? And there's no one or two big things you can do, right? And so it was a huge challenge. We wrote almost 1 million lines of code. And you think about it, it's something very hard to differentiate. I like to give the example, right? How do you differentiate electricity? Your electricity mine, what's the difference? Only whether it's continuous, right? Is it there? If it's there, it's good. If it's not there, it's bad. And in a way, if you think about it, banking is somewhat like that, probably not as commoditized as that, but difficult to differentiate. And so it was the most challenging initiative I've ever undertaken in my career. And I was very well prepared for it, as I've already related.
Having a background in both technology and business, right? That played a very big role in you leading tomorrow. But let's go back to the early days at Tomorrow, right? And I'm sure it being one of the first digital banks in the region, there would be immense pressure on you to make sure that this becomes a success, right? And yet, you took a very different approach.
Yes.
Which was, like the traditional ways that let's engage some management consultant, let them bring in the, business models, canvas, strategies, and you head and implement, make sure that it gets implemented, right? But you took a very, very different approach. And I find that to be extremely brave and courageous, right? Because the
Some people
success.
say stubborn. I find the word more stubborn than courageous.
No, I find it to be courageous. Why? Because at that point of time, the success still lies with the team. But if it would have failed, the failure would have lied at your feet, right?
Yes.
And that takes an immense amount of courage to then go ahead and take a decision which has not been heard in the market before, right?
Yes.
More than why you took that approach, I want to first understand what gave you that courage. Why did you have so much confidence in yourself that we have to do something which is different? And what was the cause of that courage? How do you gather that courage?
Well, I did look at it that way. I look at it as I owe the people that I attracted to the jobs, right? They left good jobs. I owed them a responsibility to do what's right, to do what makes business sense, right? And also right by them. And therefore, um, I didn't see it as being brave. I saw it as doing what's right, right? And what makes sense and what would work. And I think I got a very good support and advice from uh, our group CEO, uh, Mr. Wee Chong. And his advice to me was, Dennis, we are not going to be the first in the world to launch a digital bank. So, take the time, design it, build something that can really stand the test of time. And that was very good advice because nowadays, we live in the world of the soundbite, right? Everybody, okay, no, I want it yesterday. I don't want to spend a lot of money, and I want everything. And I think one of the biggest reasons for failure in most transformations in any industry, in any company, is the lack of trade-off. So we took our time. We took almost 9 months to really design it well. In that time, we benchmarked, we asked very fundamental questions, right? How are we going to differentiate? What are we going to do? And by focusing on the right things, we eventually got a design that I think even today, I have colleagues telling me that it is one of a kind design that other people would want to understand how to copy it and how to put that design.
Yeah.
And so it was really a very forward thinking approach and design to building a digital bank.
You spoke about trade-offs being a very difficult thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And prioritization of trade-offs are more or less not the same thing, right? That has got a lot to do with the culture, right?
Yeah.
Having the ability to prioritize one thing over the other
Yeah.
requires a right set of culture to be set into the team.
Yes.
And that essentially gets driven from the top.
Yes.
Meaning in tomorrow from you, right? So,
Yeah.
like, how did you manage? Because most of the people who would be working on tomorrow might be coming from a very different culture.
Yeah.
And to then enable them to have that freedom to take proper decisions with respect to trade-offs or prioritization requires them to have that freedom, right? Requires them to have your trust in place. So what were some of the, maybe you can talk, if you can give us some examples or talk about a few events where you were able to drive that point through, that we have to take the right decisions. We have to prioritize properly, right? Like not everything is equally important. We have to trade off and again, think from the first principles. If you can give us certain examples so that, we might.
It's a very simple and powerful question, but actually it's very hard to achieve because everybody thinks they're right. Nobody thinks that they're wrong. So therefore, especially when you're doing things that have never been done before, sometimes a question of opinion and who is loudest might win the day, right? So you got to get many things right. First, your narrative has to be very clear. What are we really doing, right? And one of the things we picked on as the kind of vision of what we're doing is to build the world's most proactive digital bank. And you've got to get the rest of the narrative. Who are you serving? What is your purpose? What are the values? And then we also define what are the values. We define the behaviors. You must define the values and the behaviors, and culture is simply values plus behavior. But a lot of people define the values and the behaviors, but don't then basically look out and reinforce the right behaviors and tell individuals who are behaving in the wrong way to stop it. And that culture piece is important because then it sets the pace. And there is intense debate. I can give you a very simple example, right? Just deciding, should we include all of the bank's products or just include the products that we were introducing in tomorrow? That was a gargantuan decision, right? And the other thing people have wrong is that, if you want to empower people, then you don't get into decisions. You leave it to them, right? But that's totally not the case, because you need to understand your business first. If your business is an experiential model, right, where you can't really do one or two big things, it's stringing together 20, 30 small things, it must be coordinated. Coordination is more important than breakthrough. Because if you have breakthrough uncoordinated, it becomes a mess in the experience. And so that makes it even more difficult, because you can't have innovation bubbling up the way you can, right, in, let's say, a different situation where you're looking at one breakthrough, right? And I like to contrast two surprising things, right? Building a digital bank, there's no one big thing you can do. It's 20 things, 20 small things that you assemble and you really pay attention to detail, right? It's really like how Apple brings their hardware, software, and firmware together in the iMac, in the Mac Air. After all, they are simply personal computers, right? But why is it they gel so well together most of the time? And that's the reason, is the obsession with detail, right? I mean, many of your viewers will probably know the story, whether true or not, that exemplifies the obsessiveness of Apple's founder, that he wants the chips in the circuit board to be straight, even though the engineer is telling no one can see it, right? But he's saying, I can see it. So it needs a kind of obsession, because you're not doing the one, two big things. And that makes it even more difficult, right? Because you are in a situation where you have to debate things. It's not just delegate everything, right? Because if you delegate everything, who's going to coordinate and make sure that the end experience is good? And that makes you, somebody got to be in a position to be the chief experience designer.
Correct.
And I think that's form part of the critical piece, right? So it's so many things you have to bring together, right? One is break down the hierarchy. So one of the rules that I applied was that I'm encouraging everybody to ask why. Right? The most junior person who just joined can go in a meeting and say, okay, why are we doing it this way? And the rule is that if somebody asks why, then the most senior person in the room has to take it upon himself to help the person find the answer why, or say we don't know and we're going to find out if it's something important to know. And that's difficult to do, because you want that debate and discourse, which means meetings can go on. But yet, if you have too many people bringing out very minor points, then the meeting goes all over the place, and you've got to control that. At the same time, you've got to coordinate across 12 streams of work. Yeah. And therefore, you have many people in the meeting. I remember in those days, people are complaining to me, saying the meetings are too long and there are too many people. But then my retort is, okay, but if we don't have these meetings, how does anybody know what's going on?
Exactly.
Right? How does
context will be
understand
lost.
the big picture of what we're trying to do? So it's a massive coordination exercise, right? Where you need to ensure that clarity of what you're doing and what you're not doing, and that clarity is like tuning a TV, an analog TV. Nobody tunes analog TV anymore, but when you tune analog TV, it gets fuzzy, then it gets clear, then it gets fuzzy. And it's almost like that. We're going back and forth all the time. And I do remember the team's frustration, right? Telling me, no, this is the X time we'll talk about this subject. And back to what I was saying, right? Do we include all or just the new things we were doing? That was a long debate, and it's a very important discussion, because not doing it would make the engineering a lot simpler, because you don't have a lot of the logic, right? That it may be very hard to put in. But not doing it also is a problem, because it wasn't a separate license. It was the same license, which means that you have an obligation to show a customer his total debt obligations. So very simple thing like that, we had to debate it, because this is what for some reason, it's now called Bezos metrics because Jeff Bezos put it in one of his shareholder letters. But it's basically if you have decisions that are once made very hard to reverse and have very large impact, you need to spend a lot of time on it. And this was one of them, this very minor detail of include everything or not. So people got it wrong in the sense that, oh yeah, just leave it, just delegate, empower. You know, it's not going to work in the case where you need a lot of coordination, and it's not going to work in situations where it's irreversible and high impact. Then you need to spend time, right? You need to make the right decisions, right? And I bring up another interesting analogy, you know, for a lot of the companies I talk to, right? If you're going to build a building, right? You're going to build the tallest building. You don't just go up to the builder and say, okay, you know, the current tallest building is 100 stories, so I want 102 stories. So you know, right? It's concrete, it's doors, it's windows, it's, you know, staircase, it's elevators, right? And yeah, plumbing, all that. Just go and build. You know, nobody does that, right? And so why are we doing that in most of our transformations? Telling technology you should go and build something, right? And I don't really know what I want right now. There'll be a disaster in the building, and it's equally a disaster now outside of buildings. So it is in fact a colossal coordination task, and you know, finally when I completed it, I realized why. Yeah, most transformation are not going to work, and hence created what is now called the All Digital Future Playbook, or TAP, to help companies, because actually without some method, your success actually is very, very poor.
Let's actually, now that you've brought this up, let's delve deeper into the All Digital Playbook, right? Why did you how did you stumble upon it? Why was it developed in the first place? And how do you think it will have an impact on any organization which is going through a digital transformation journey? It's not just limited to banks or
Yes.
new banks, right?
Yes.
It is this playbook is applicable for anyone who is undergoing a digital transformation. So maybe let's just dig a bit deeper and understand this playbook.
So I left UOB in the middle of 2020 to head a consortium bidding for one of the digital bank licenses that Singapore was awarding. Unfortunately, we didn't win. They awarded 2 instead of 3 licenses. So maybe if the 3rd license, we might have been, you know, in the game. And then I had to decide, right, at the end of 2020, you know, should I go back to an executive role? And then I felt, you know, I should really encapsulate my learning building tomorrow between 2017 and 2020. So what I did was I wrote Driving Digital Transformation, lessons from building the first ASEAN Digital Bank. And that really was an encapsulation of all our learnings, right? The massive learnings we had building Tomorrow by UOB. But that was the first 4 chapters, right? I then sat down and thought through what went right. What were all the good decisions we made? What were the decisions that weren't as good? What if I had to go back to 2017 and I started, right? Knowing what I know at the end of the journey, how could I have benefited myself if I could travel in time? And as I sat through and I thought through a lot of the decisions we made, and when you are really in the throes of you know, building something, unfortunately we were not following the architect, civil engineer, builder model, right? We don't have the schematics, we don't have the bill of materials, you know, which is how buildings get built, right? Imagine a building is a very serious coordination problem. You don't have those things, and developed a method from all our experiences, all our insights, all our learnings, and that became chapter 5 of Driving Digital Transformation, which explains what should have been the method we should have used had we gotten a method, which we didn't, but we developed the method along the way as we progressed. And subsequent to the publication of Driving Digital Transformation in 2021, I then wrote with my co-author, Jun Kyu, whom I know from Standard Chartered, and he's a great person to collaborate with because he was Global Head of Strategy at Standard Chartered Bank. He's ex-McKinsey, now at BCG. He's got a wealth of knowledge. And together, we put our 60 years of experience running large, complex businesses, but also starting up. He started up an incredible e-commerce venture from scratch. I, of course, built and designed Tomorrow by UOB. And we put all that knowledge into the All Digital Future playbook, or TAP for short. And I think what is different about it is that we realized that nothing short of a holistic approach works for incumbent companies of size and complexity. A lot of people use business model canvas, right? Business model canvas is when you have a blank sheet of paper most of the time. If you ask a large or even mid-size, company to use that, right, they generally just fill it in. But it doesn't make any sense when you look at it. And therefore, we concluded that the 4 dimensions that are critical are customers, business, capabilities, right? Which is where all your data, IT, and other things that make it feasible come in. And then people and leadership are very important in incumbent companies, because the more successful you are, the more you're trapped in a certain paradigm, and you have to get the values, the culture, the mindsets changed to bring people out of those paradigms. And so that became the genesis of the All Digital Future playbook, and we believe it's the first holistic approach to digital transformation, or as I think it should rightly be called, business transformation that involves people, process, technology, customers, and so much more. That is really genesis, and we came out with a playbook because if you look at the success rates in incumbent companies, they are very poor, right? Between 70 to 90% of transformations don't meet their objectives. Because number one, some of them are totally solution oriented. Let's implement AI. But do you really need AI? Right? AI is good at pattern recognition. Do you really need it? When we were designing tomorrow, we never talked about any technology. We are focused on, okay, what's the problem we want to solve? Right? If we solve it, does it matter to them? Right? How do you differentiate? So getting the CVP correct, getting the business model correct, iterating back and forth until you feel that, well, this is it, right? This is something that is worth doing. Then you start to talk about capabilities. So it's really to increase the success rate of the probability of success. And if you talk about transformation today, right, it's no longer a project. You are transforming every day, or you're finished.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. True.
We were just talking about this before the podcast. So it becomes a norm. You have to begin to interoperate between customers, business capabilities, people, and leadership all the time. And what makes this very complicated is that they are all interacting with each other.
Correct.
Right? If you have something that's highly differentiated, right, your core competence gap might be very big. If your core competence gap is very big, your path to profit is long. But then if you think that, no, my stakeholders want to see a faster return, then you dial down, right, the differentiation. Yes, the core competence gap goes down, but then your differentiation may be such that it's no longer that different between what the competitor offering. And sometimes today it can be a non-traditional competitor offering, right? And therefore you can't scale. And so these complex are iterative in nature. And we have come up with a program with the National University of Singapore, actually, that leverages the TAP method. And we want to train as many people as we can on this methodology so that companies can be more successful with their business transformation, right? Which is going to be an everyday thing. And not only that, I think if you spend so much money transforming and a lot of it is not successful, it also is adding to global warming, adding waste, and therefore this is
Absolutely.
our way of giving back.
No, that's really amazing, and that's really amazing, and wish you the best for that. Wish you the best for that. Coming back to tomorrow by UOB, right? One of the
Yeah.
key things that stands out is the NPS score, right?
Yes. Yes.
And I believe the whole overall customer experience and the flywheel which you speak
Yeah.
about acquiring,
Yeah.
about then making sure that the customer is transacting on the app, the data is being captured, insights are being driven from that data, and then that those insights are leading you to engage with the customers more deeper, right? So I
Yes.
believe that flywheel had a lot to do
Yes.
with getting the high NPS score as well as making sure that the overall app succeeds into the markets that it launched, right? So can you please speak a bit more about, I mean, it's a we understand the flywheel, the individual aspects of it, right? But putting together that flywheel again uh, requires you to think deeply about the customer value prop first, the problem first, and the solutions later, right? So maybe if you can give us a few examples,
Okay.
some problems, stumbling blocks that you faced along the way while developing this flywheel.
It's a great question. And to me, it really brings up the fact that it's not about digital. Digital bank is not about digital, right? The digital is what you are using to, you know, enable, right? But what are you enabling? You're enabling a great experience at lower and lower costs. That's what you're doing. So the measure must be about advocacy. Must be, right? Of course, advocacy doesn't mean you make money, right? That's why CVP and business model must come together. So from the beginning, you know that we need customers with high lifetime value. That's why we selected young professionals, because they have the highest lifetime value. From the beginning, you know that you want to bundle products. You don't want to sell them one by one, right? So it's not just about NPS and the right business model coming together. But if you don't have a high net promoter score, right, or any other score that measures advocacy, then you are already in very deep trouble, because you cannot reduce your cost to acquire and your cost to serve as you ramp up. And if that happens, you cannot achieve positive marginal contribution, which means you'll never be profitable. And even if you have a lot of cheap, venture money, this is a problem, right? Because now people begin to think that, well, I can solve the problem later, right? After every competitor is gone, right? Yeah, this is no longer a problem because there's no one left. Okay, but you have to consider whether that thing you're doing is highly imitatable, right? And not very global, because then it breaks down, right? It's not everything's a global business, right? A lot of businesses are fundamentally local. Banking's a local business, locally regulated, local capital, so one of these, therefore, important points was, I was very adamant about the net promoter score. If anybody also did things that increased the number of customers or reduced the activity rate, I mean, these are just ego-driven things that people do for short term. And the sad thing about it is that people fall for it now, because everybody is suffering from short-termism. So yeah, okay, the numbers go up from 1 million to 2 million, that's great. But nobody asks, what's your activity rate? Your activity rate has fallen, right? From, let's say, 40, 50% to 5%. That's terrible, right? Actually, you're burning money, because in banking, you pay people to try and you don't charge them. We don't have the equivalent of, freemium games where you can buy the power-ups. We have to wait till, and fees are getting cut, which means you got to wait till they borrow something from you, from they lend. Most transacting is to raise deposit. It costs money, doesn't make money. So that's why the months we spent in the early 2017 were very pivotal, right? They were all about the design,
Yeah.
right? In fact, yeah, we had the consultants asking us, we should go and prototype. I said, prototype what? We don't know anything, right? We don't know what's the proposition. Then we should gamify. Now, gamification cannot be a catch-all for when you don't know what you do, you gamify things. So I think it's sad now that the way things go is that nobody goes back to fundamentals, right? Everybody is just dealing with the facade of things. And so yes, having that whole concept, because in the end, right, why in our methodology tab we put data, right, as one of the 6 capabilities is because data ultimately allows you to personalize, to learn, right, and to understand how people are using, and it closes that loop. So we knew from the beginning that it had to incorporate learning, right? Because if it's something that has no learning, it's very easy to understand that you're going to be imitated the minute, right? I mean, like, just look at any bank product, right? Any competent bank can copy in 3 months.
Yeah.
There's no learning involved. You just say, oh, what's the price and how, what's that? In fact, most banking differentiation are not true differentiations of value. They are really discounting benefits, of one way or another, just disguised with lots of conditions given to you, right? So that only some can make it. So it was quite evident, therefore, that data will be an important piece. And this thing about the flywheel, right? I just stumbled upon it one day. It had been fermenting for a while. We had been discussing it, but just one day when I looked at it, it just made a lot of sense that you need to have people who are transacting, right? Anyway, you don't want people who are not transacting, because those are customers that, I mean, they're not going to have any value contribution. And sometimes, banks do the silliest of things. We will just acquire 2 million customers and find that, only 5% of it is active, right? Because, I mean, you're paying someone to try, why not, right? So I was very adamant that we would keep, the active rate to 50%. And you're right, those were things that my colleagues were starting to look at me and say, what is he talking about? Because we are breaking the entire mold, right? And that's why the transformation is also so difficult, because the mold is cast, right? It's all about product, it's all about customers, it's all about acquiring, right? Quality, we focus on it later. Anyway, if you're a big portfolio, you can take the hit, right? That's just the way of life, right? You have got that wastage. But as a new digital bank, you can't afford that, right? You can't afford to do it. So having active customers and getting them to transact, taking that data, using that data to make the experience even better. And in fact, at the end of almost 40, 50 reiteration on the actually, what is the proposition, right? Because it's very hard to describe. It's not like, in the what I call the breakthrough quadrant, you can do 1 or 2 things, right? For example, LED light bulbs, right? They use 7 times less electricity. Yes, they cost 5 times more, and it's coming down all the time, right? But they last 3 times longer. Easy maths, right? Saves you so much electricity once you do that maths, right? So you should, switch. And switching costs very low. Just unscrew the bulb, screw in a LED light bulb, and you can see that everybody is doing that replacement, right? Because of the energy savings. But from a banking perspective, you have no one feature like that, right? So you've really got to pull everything together. And therefore, the tough job of understanding exactly how do we compete was very important. And of course, from a banker, let's go back to product. In fact, I had so many conversations where I simply refused to allow the team to price the best. Because the logic was simple, right? After spending so much money, you want to price the best. Why don't we do any of this and just price the best, right? So I was saying, no, I want to be number 3, which again, was like, what's he talking about, right? But it makes business sense. right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Experience has to show itself, or you have nothing, and it goes back to NPS score. NPS score must be very high. People, once they use it, will feel, hey, banking has always been this way. So in the end, the three pieces of the proposition, right, which now to me, right, it's so crystal clear. Back then it wasn't, when you're in the midst of it, right, is at the baseline, you create a transacting, onboarding, and credit granting experience that people say banking should always have been this way. But it's very hard to do. It's very easy to say because it requires an intense obsession to detail that most people don't have. That's why it's very hard to beat Apple, right? I tell people this story, right? In your Apple iPhone, if you turn on the torch, the on-off button in the icon actually moves up and down. And this is in my book, right? I mean, can you imagine the level of detail? I mean, it just shows the level of detail you have to go through, right? And it's so difficult to do it. Very few banks can do it because of the level of detail. All the senior people want to go for the strategic discussion. Nobody wants to discuss process, right? But banking is a service fundamentally, and service is all about process. If you don't have a good process, what are you automating, right? Whatever you do is terrible in the end, right? And we send the most junior people to the process meetings. They'll get the, gated by all the control functions to say, no, you can't do this, can't do that. And whatever you end up with is a big mess. Then you have to produce great service, because frankly, banking service still, look at the telephone, using the telephone to contact, service, right? You press this, press that, and sometimes it just hangs up because, oh, sorry, there's no one available.
Yeah.
So the design of putting everything to chat, that was very, very bold, because, any chat you create, any chatbot you create, just like anything driven by algorithm when you create initially, is dumb.
Yeah.
Right? And we had to teach it 25,000 Thai phrases. Every month, I would go and review which are all the calls that the chatbot couldn't handle, had to be escalated to agents. And we designed it from the beginning that it get escalated very fast, because we know the chatbot can't handle it, right? But over time, it began to learn and the layering, right? The learning comes up exponentially as you keep doing it, right? And
But
today,
by
I
the
believe the
way,
last score was it can understand almost 95%.
Oh, okay. But like, see, again, like this is something where, which you spoke about earlier, that you require a long-term vision for this, right?
Yeah.
You cannot, with a short-term vision, you cannot implement such,
Of course,
provisions.
no way.
And although you earlier very humbly accepted that, instead of courage, you only thought about it being right, but thinking long-term when implementing a new project of this magnitude, right, requires a lot of courage as well, because there are not going to be any short-term gains. There are not going to be any short-term returns,
Yeah,
right?
and there are a
Returns
lot of
are
people
going
in
to
the
be in the long run, and
organization.
that requires a lot of courage.
There are a
So
lot of people in the
although you
organization
are
will feel that I can better use that money. Right? And some of this is a leap of faith, right? People came to tell me, oh, there's a leap of faith. The NPS is a leap of faith,
yeah.
right? But it's a failure to understand the fundamentals, right? It's not just NPS, of course. If you don't do any lending,
Correct.
right,
Correct.
you're not going to make any money, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, you have to make money for running the business.
Yes.
Right?
So it's very complicated because you have to put all these jigsaw puzzle pieces together, right?
Correct.
And today, without a method, I would say, right, and this is by analogy that everybody kind of gets it immediately in the head, right? Can you imagine putting a 50,000 piece jigsaw puzzle with no cover together? You have no picture, there's no cover. Someone stole the cover, leaving you with the 50,000 pieces, and your task to assemble it. And that's how the transformation is, right? So yes, there's a lot of people pushing for shorter term, but if you're going to make something transformative, right, it's got to stand the test of time. And you've got to resist all this, let's just show some good numbers, right? And you've got to resist that you've got people saying bad things. See, it's terrible. Look at, what they've done, right? But do you want to do the right thing, right? Or you just want to do the easy thing?
Correct. So I appreciate, again, as I said, like, I appreciate your humbleness in not saying that it's the courage, it's just the doing the right thing, but requires a lot of courage nonetheless, right? Dennis, it has been a very insightful conversation. I'm really glad that I got a chance to speak to you. Thank you so much. But let me end this conversation with a very simple question. What is the kindest thing that someone has ever done for you?
I think it's the belief. It's the belief that yes, even though I'm not, 100% confident that it's going to work, but I'm going to trust what you say, and as we go along, I'm going to ask more questions, but we will assume that that's the right thing to do for now. And I think in building Tomorrow by UOB, you had to have the trust of hundreds of people, right, who had to take the leap of faith to say, yeah, this is the right way to go, even though yes, we have a lot of unanswered questions, right? But this is the right thing in the end because it makes long-term sense.
Okay, awesome. Dennis, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
My pleasure.
I had a great time speaking with you, and I really look forward to meeting you soon. Thank you so much.
Have a great day ahead.
You too. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.